To fully enjoy Give Me Mine, start at chapter 1 and follow through to the most current video. To enhance the story, narration may be slightly different than the actual story in the book. Get your copy today and follow along. Enjoy. On August 29th, Janay was rushed to St. Mary's Hospital after her water broke. She was curling her mother's hair, and Diane sat on the floor while Janay sat on the couch. All of a sudden, she told Janay that her neck felt like it was wet. And she was just 2 curls away from being finished when suddenly she was interrupted by a sharp pain. The feeling only lasted about 3 seconds tops, but Janay knew that something was definitely happening. She slumped forward to ease the sharp pain, clutched her stomach, and screamed loudly in her mother's ear. They both knew what time it was now. Even in the midst of the labor pains, Janay remained calm and didn't panic. But her mother did. She turned red in the face and ran around in circles, throwing her hands up in the air and screaming, "Hallelujah!
Hallelujah!
Over
Hallelujah!
and over again.
Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
Janay grabbed her overnight bag that had been packed by the front door for the past 3 weeks, waiting for this moment. And then they left. Janay breathed deep in and out like they had taught her in her classes. And she got a good rhythm going. And it took some of the frustration away from the fact that she was having her baby. While driving to the hospital, Diane drove recklessly. She swerved from lane to lane and could hardly concentrate because she was still screaming, "Hallelujah!" Janay decided that enough was enough. She made her mother pull over to the side of the road. They switched, and Janay continued to drive herself the rest of the way. She knew that Diane was just worried about her. And she even thought it was kind of cute. When they arrived, there were 2 nurses waiting for Janay with a wheelchair. She gave her mother instructions on what to do while she was being wheeled away. "Mom!" Janay yelled between contractions. "Call Scottie. He probably won't answer, but keep calling and then page him 911 over and over and over until he responds. And please,
Calm the fuck down!"
Diane replied to her daughter's request with a "Hallelujah!" And to Janay, that meant okay. Diane tried calling Scottie's cell phone, but the only thing she got was his voicemail, which to Diane immediately meant that he was probably up to no good. She left several messages. And she also paged him, and surprisingly, he called back after only 1 911 page.
My daughter told me to call you and we're at St. Mary's. Bye.
Shit, she kept it quick and simple. Then she hung up in his face before he could say anything. About 10 minutes later, when Diane and Janay looked up, to their surprise, Scottie was right there. He arrived just minutes before Janay was on her way to the delivery room. Over his baggy jeans and white t-shirt, he put on a hospital gown that tied up in the back. During the labor, Janay saw a side of Scottie that she had never seen before. And he was so compassionate and not only held her hand, but stayed by her side during the whole delivery. He took pictures, whispered sweet things to her in her ear, rubbed her feet, and just treated her like a real queen. It made the whole experience so perfect for Janay, and they both shared the birth of their child together. Three hours after Janay arrived at the hospital, Lachey Melody Washington was introduced to the world. A 6-pound bundle of joy, and both parents were delighted. All 10 fingers and toes were in place, and that was the only thing that Diane cared about. "Hallelujah!" Diane shouted when the doctors announced that it was a baby girl. Diane thought her grandbaby looked absolutely beautiful. Right away, she saw a resemblance between Scottie and the baby. It was so obvious that he was the father. And she had all of his features. And she had his nose, his lips, and the cutest little bald head. Her skin was so soft. As soon as Janay took one look at her baby, she knew her daughter was special. She was the sweetest little angel. When everybody cleared out of the hospital room, Janay thought it was the perfect opportunity for her to tell Scottie just how she felt. He sat next to her bed watching reruns of MASH on the TV that was mounted to the ceiling, and he was enjoying every minute of it. Janay looked deep into his eyes and began to pour her heart out. "Look, Scottie, I can't do this anymore. I have our baby to think about, and you do too. So I'm not doing that shit anymore. So please don't ask me. And you can tell Fonz what I said too." She gave it to him just like that. No excuses, no long speech, nothing. Just straight and to the point. And she didn't even care how he took it. Janay was serious, and he knew that she was. The twisted look on his face told her how furious he was. He was pissed. Any other time, he would have given her his famous speech to butter her up. But not this time. After Janay expressed how she felt to him, she rolled over in her uncomfortable bed with her back away from him, and she shut her eyes. And he didn't scream and yell at all. He never reacted that way with Janay. But this time, she could tell that he badly wanted to. He shook her body to get her attention, but she didn't budge. And she was exhausted and had no energy. And he wanted an explanation, but she didn't have one. She didn't need one, and she wasn't gonna give him one. The only thing that Janay did was try to convince him that he should stop too. But he didn't agree and was not trying to hear her at all. "Man, you tripping right now. That's all. And when you get home, you'll think about what you're saying. Man, what the fuck you gonna do? Go back to work at the corner store?
Wow.
How the fuck you gonna take care of a baby?" he asked.
Yo, that's fucked up, yo.
But he had no idea that Janay had been saving her money. In his mind, she still needed him. Now, Scottie and Fonz should have had enough money for them to start some businesses and keep the circulation going. They had robbed so many banks that Janay stopped counting a long time ago. Sometimes they would even risk their lives driving out of state to cities they knew nothing about. Scottie was always so convincing with them going out so often and taking huge risks with where they decided to go. And he even chose which banks they would hit. And there were times when they had absolutely no business at all being in some of those small towns. But Scottie's theory was all banks were pretty much the same. "Seen one, you seen them all. Shit," Scottie would always say. Janay would be in the back seat worrying like crazy, and that's all he would say to assure her that they wouldn't get caught. From the first time all the way down to the last time just weeks ago, Janay always got butterflies in her stomach and worried nonstop about her future. It was getting way out of control for the three of them. Probably the saddest thing of it all was that Scottie was not the most financially responsible person. And he blew through cash like it was nobody's business. Fancy cars,
Bullshit.
jewelry, and expensive clothes.
Bullshit.
He was flashy and had to be seen.
More bullshit.
And he really didn't have anything to show for all his money but bullshit. even with the other places he rented elsewhere. And he had to be right in the thick of West Lawn projects. He loved to floss and show off. West Lawn was always exciting at any given time, and Scottie got a kick out of that. There were always sirens and ambulances and sometimes shootouts and family brawls and dance battles and cookouts, and it was home to so many. There was never a dull moment. He practically lived at the strip clubs and in the mall. He didn't own a home, but he had several spots in the city that he rented. Investments wasn't something that he was thinking about. Thinking about his future didn't seem important at all to him. He just lived for the moment. Fonz was smart, though. He did own his own duplex on the north side. And he also had a couple of rental properties. He blew through money too, but most of Fonz's money could be seen hanging in his closet. But when it was all said and done, shit, at least Fonz had his own crib. He even bought his mom's a house and a car. They were spending their money so foolishly. Neither one of them had ever worked a day in their lives, which was another huge red flag. One good thing about Scottie was that he always gave back, though. He robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. He always did for others and never expected anything in return. He was the man in West Lawn projects, and all the little kids looked up to him. They saw the lavish lifestyle that he lived and knew that it was something that they wanted. They ran up to his car like he was the president. They all knew that he would be handing out some singles to all the neighborhood children. To some of them, he was Uncle Scottie. There were people twice as old as Scottie walking around referring to him as Uncle Scottie, just to reap some of the benefits from what Scottie could offer. They all respected him, though, and Scottie liked being admired, even if it was by a bunch of adolescents. Every year around the end of August, each kid in the projects would have at least a week's worth of back-to-school clothes, plus a pair of new shoes. Scottie and Fonz had organized a huge back-to-school clothing and shoe drive. They would go to the outlet mall in Gurney and spend thousands of dollars on shoes and clothes. There were bounce houses for the kids and free food and so much fun for everyone. It was always a treat for the less fortunate families of West Lawn. And he had his favorites that he would do more for because of their situations. And then sometimes there were those families who clearly could use some extra help. But the mothers and fathers had too much pride to accept stuff from Scottie. They didn't like him because they assumed he was selling drugs right in their community. And they didn't want to accept his gifts for their children. Not too many families were like that, though. The majority of them gladly put their pride aside and took whatever they could get from Scottie. In fact, that was the biggest misconception about him. There were a lot of people that thought he was a drug dealer. He never sold drugs, though. Neither of them did that. When Janay first met him, she thought he did too. But he didn't. It wasn't his thing. So when Scottie got sick of Janay preaching to him about calling it quits, he stormed out of her hospital room, throwing his hands up in the air as to say, "Fuck you." Janay knew that he would be pissed. But if that was the way he wanted it, then that was the way it would be for their daughter's sake. Although it hurt like hell to see him walk out of that door, she had to let him leave. And she was taking her money and making it work for her and her baby. She knew that Scottie didn't know about her bank account because she kept that to herself. And he assumed that she just blew her money like he did. But she didn't. Whew. She was happy that she had gotten that off her chest because he had been there for so long. And she wanted to quit months ago, but just couldn't tell him. Now, she just had to wait and see what his reaction after his initial reaction would be. Would he have something up his sleeve waiting for her? She was unsure whether or not she should expect the worst, but she was prepared to stand by the decision that she had just made. Like it or not, she was finished with that shit. Her mind was made up, and she was calling it quits and looking forward to a different type of drive, which was headed straight in the direction of motherhood. She was unwilling to hit the brakes until it was mastered. Janay knew that motherhood would be a bumpy ride, but she was ready for it. Once they got home from the hospital, Diane quickly took over caring for Shay. Janay could tell that her mother was trying to make up for what she had put her through. Those few years of abandonment had started to bite Diane in her butt. Now it was like she delivered Shay herself. She was so overprotective of her, and her rules had to be followed by anyone wanting to be around Shay. Shoes had to be off before you could enter the house. If your hair looked funny to her, she might even ask you to put on a hairnet. And she even had a box of surgical masks next to the front door like it was a virus going around or something. Shit, Diane was not playing any games with her new grandbaby. She just wanted Janay to rest while she played mommy to Shay. And she was encouraging Janay to start doing hair again and to go back to school. In order for Diane to babysit Shay, Janay had to give her a key to the house, which wasn't a problem anymore. Diane had proven herself to Janay and everybody else who doubted that she was able to stay clean. She was making them all out to be liars, going on 16 months of being drug-free. Janay did restart her kitchen hairdos, and now she was charging everyone like she told them she would after she had the baby. And she charged $25 per head for any hairdo and $5 for a wash. Nobody complained because her work was worth more than what she was charging, and everybody knew it. She did her best on every client she touched, and they all were pleased. She was still learning how to do certain things and didn't want to move too fast. So she stuck to what she knew she could do. For now, she was just styling. She was creative. And she was good at having an idea in her head and executing it. She was in business, and business was indeed good to her. She had help now too, and was paying TT $100 a week to answer her cell phone, make appointments, wash and blow dry clients, and do other odd jobs that needed to be done while Diane looked after Shay. Janay used her cell phone as a business line because she didn't want anybody else having her home number. There was still a lot of prank calls in the middle of the night from some of Scottie's other girls, and she didn't need any more. TT was 10 and in the 5th grade. She was such a cutie and often got angry when people would remind her how much she looked just like Rudy from The Cosby Show. They could be twins. After school, Janay watched her while her mother Joyce worked second shift at the casino. And she would do her homework immediately after school, work as Janay's assistant, eat dinner, and by the time her mother got home from work at midnight, she was always knocked out on Janay's sofa. Janay never accepted any money from Joyce because TT was the cutest, smartest, well-behaved little lady out of all the kids in West Lawn. They stayed 2 houses down from Janay, and Janay watched TT grow up the same way Joyce had watched Janay grow up. TT would probably watch Shay grow up too, because Janay had no intentions of leaving West Lawn. Joyce had been living in West Lawn as long as Janay had, and they never said one word to each other over the years. They just gave quick glances every now and then when they crossed paths. It wasn't until about a year and a half ago when Janay turned 17 and got her driver's license that they actually met. Scottie bought Janay a brand new Neon just because she had passed a road test. It was a normal Milwaukee winter morning and snow was everywhere. It was freezing, but that didn't stop people's lives. Folks were still due at their jobs, kids were still expected to report for classes, and at 8 in the morning, the streets were still packed with cars and pedestrians. Janay was on her way to the bank to make a deposit when she noticed that Joyce was having trouble starting her car. Impressed to see that Joyce had her hood up and her head buried under it, Janay stood and watched to see if her neighbor had the skills to get the job done. For a few minutes, she watched Joyce fiddle around. Then she walked around and cranked the ignition. But nothing happened. It was dead. Her frustration was so obvious, so Janay intervened. When she approached Joyce to be a good neighbor and to see if she needed help, Joyce refused Janay's generosity. But Janay wouldn't take no for an answer and insisted on giving her a jump. Even though Joyce swore that she didn't need any help, Janay pulled her cables from the trunk of her car. She matched the reds and the blacks, and her car was running in 10 minutes. Afterwards, she just thanked Janay and smiled at her, and that was it. But several days later, while taking out the trash, they both met at the dumpster, and the two of them had a formal meeting. "Hey girl, I'm Joyce." And they shook hands. "I really appreciate your help the other day, and I know I was acting like a bitch, but that's just how it is around here. I don't like asking nobody for shit. You know what I mean, girl? I've been living in these projects for damn near 10 years, and I don't fuck with nobody around here. All I do is go to work and come home. It be too much shit going on, and I ain't with the bullshit. I have my baby girl to look out for, and I don't want to have to kill a motherfucker over here. So that's why I just be in my house, minding my business." And she came off a bit aggressive in the beginning, but Janay listened a little longer and she understood just where Joyce was coming from. "Girl, I see everything that goes on out here," explained Joyce. "All the drugs, all the shootings, all the fights, who fucking who drives what, and everything else. Listen, let me tell you something, young girl. You need to be careful over here. And don't be thinking that these motherfuckers over here care about you and your shit. Because they sure don't. Believe me, girl, I'm telling you the truth. Thanks again, girl." And on that note, they said their goodbyes and departed. Janay didn't once think that Joyce was a nosy bitch. She just took all of the advice that Joyce had given her and she put it to use. And she didn't have any reason not to trust Joyce because Janay already knew everything Joyce was saying to her was true. She knew about Diane's drug problems and that she was drug-free now. She knew about Lil Tori's death, Fonz, and of course she knew about Scottie and Janay's relationship. She too assumed that Scottie was a drug dealer, and she came to that assumption from his flashy lifestyle. She even knew that Janay had dropped out of school and used to work for Mr. Chow. She knew it all, and Janay wasn't mad at her for that. She was just looking out for herself and her daughter. She was so aware of her surroundings, and Janay completely understood. Joyce was in her early 30s, and she had a natural beauty that made her look younger than she actually was. Janay would always see her coming and going, and it was always just the two of them. She was hardworking for sure and smart as a whip. She was a single mother doing what she had to do to raise her daughter alone. And it was so obvious that she didn't take any shit. She was a strong, black, independent woman with morals and values, and Janay liked her from that day forward. The two of them became really good friends in such a short time. That's why Janay had no problem keeping TT while Joyce worked, because she knew that her friend would do it for her too. And TT always begged Janay to do her pretty hair in a fancy big girl style, but Janay never did. And she didn't want her looking like a grown-up. There were already too many fast-ass little girls running around the neighborhood anyway. And Janay didn't want her looking older than she really was. Every time Janay would give her a crisp, new $100 bill for the week, she never forgot to say thank you.
Thank you, Miss Janay. Thank you.
On Saturday mornings, Joyce would take TT to the bank and deposit $75 from her weekly earnings, leaving her with the rest to spend however she pleased. TT was the perfect example of what a well-mannered, home-trained kid with respect should be like. A lot different than some of the other kids in the neighborhood. She was just the type of little lady Janay wanted around her daughter. And she was really good at scheduling the appointments and everything else that she did for Janay. Boys were still gross and stupid just like they should be for any kid her age. Janay worked Monday through Friday and she raked in about $500 a week. She wasn't ready to tie up her weekends yet because that was her daughter's time. Sometimes she would take a client or two every now and then on a Saturday or a Sunday for double the price, usually if one of her clients had an engagement that they wanted her to hook them up for. She would do it for them. This weekend was free, and she had plans to take the girls to see the circus downtown at the Mecca Arena. Scottie had seen his daughter twice since she'd been born, and neither time did he want to hold her. And he just criticized everything about her, which pissed Janay the fuck off. He was constantly complaining and always seemed to be annoyed with Shay. It made Janay angry, but mostly sad for her baby because she didn't deserve it. He was turning into a totally different person. Ever since their conversation at the hospital, he just didn't seem to want to be bothered at all. More and more every day she looked like him. He definitely couldn't deny this one. Janay was hoping that he gave their conversation some thought and was ready to cold turkey his bad habit. If Diane could quit her drugs and Janay could stop driving for them, then surely he could do it too. It was just a matter of him wanting to.
If you with it, I appreciate. I wanna tell you a story